The grand hall of the Consilience stretched for nearly a kilometer beneath the surface of Station Zenith. 12 species had built this place 47,000 years ago, and its walls remembered every decision that shaped the galaxy. Today, those walls witnessed fear. Archivist Velshara flickered at the edge of the chamber, her energy form shifting through colors that meant worry in her species. She had lived for 6,000 years, and never once had she seen the High Council like this. The 12 seats meant for the galaxy's eldest and wisest species now held beings who looked lost. Their advanced minds, their ancient knowledge, all of it was useless against what was happening. The stars were dying not quickly, like a supernova. Not predictably, like a star reaching the end of its fuel. They were simply growing dimmer, year by year, decade by decade. For the last 1,000 years, stars across the galaxy had been losing their light. Scientists couldn't explain it. The math didn't work. The physics made no sense. And now, entire sectors were going dark. High Councilor Theric stood at the center podium. His forearms gestured at the holographic display above them, showing a map of the galaxy. Red zones marked where stars had dimmed to dangerous levels. There were so many red zones now. Too many. Sector 447 has reached critical threshold, Theric said, his voice carrying the weight of his 3,000 years. 72 worlds. 19 billion beings. Their suns can no longer support life as we know it. He paused, and his next words felt heavy enough to crack the floor. We must begin evacuation protocols. The council chamber filled with voices. Arguments, questions, desperation. Velshara had heard it all before in the last 100 emergency sessions. The same brilliant minds asking the same questions, finding the same lack of answers. They were the oldest, wisest species in the galaxy, and they were helpless. That's when the doors opened. 2 humans walked in. Velshara had never seen a human in person before. They were young, their species having only reached the stars 200 years ago. Babies, really, compared to the Consilience members. The female wore a simple uniform marked with symbols Velshara's translator identified as Earth rank insignia. The male walked beside her, taller, his dark skin catching the dim light of the chamber. "Apologies for the interruption," the female human said. Her voice was steady despite walking into a room full of beings who could barely notice her species existed. "I am Dr. Sarah Chun, and this is Commander James Okoy. We represent humanity's petition for Consilience membership." Therese's expression would have been called annoyed if his species had eyebrows to furrow. "This is not the time. We are facing an existential crisis." "We know," Sarah said. "That's exactly why we're here. Your species has been in space for 2 centuries, one of the council members said, their voice dripping with something that translated to disdain. "We've been studying the cosmos for 40,000 years. What could you possibly offer?" Sarah pulled out a small device and projected her own hologram. It showed the same galactic map, but with different markings. "May I ask a question first? In all your studies, have you checked if something is consuming the stellar radiation?" The chamber went quiet. Velshara felt her form brighten with surprise. In all the debates, all the theories, all the desperate searching through ancient texts, nobody had asked that question. They'd assumed the stars themselves were failing. They'd looked at fusion rates, at stellar composition, at the fundamental forces of the universe. But they'd never considered that something might be taking the light away. "The universe is a closed system," Theric said slowly. "Energy cannot simply disappear." "Unless it's going somewhere else," Sarah replied. "Your sensors measure what's there. Have you measured what's not there? Have you looked for where the missing radiation might be going?" Velshara watched the council members exchange glances. 47,000 years of accumulated wisdom, and it took a species barely old enough to reach their nearest moon to ask the obvious question. The question they'd been too set in their thinking to imagine. We have deep space scanning data from 70,000 stations across the galaxy, Sarah continued. Your data. It's all public record. Commander Okoye and I spent the last 6 months analyzing it. There are anomalies, distortions in space that don't match any known phenomena. They're in the darkest zones, where the stars have dimmed the most. She pulled up another image. It showed something that looked like ripples in space itself. Vast membranes that bent light and gravity in ways that made Velshara's energy form ache just looking at them. We think something is there, Sarah said. Something that's draining the stars. We just don't know what yet. Tharex was silent for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was not a happy sound. You were saying that in 6 months, with no training in our methods, no access to our greatest scientific minds, you have found something we missed in 1,000 years of searching. Yes, Sarah said simply. The chamber erupted. Some council members were angry. Others were dismissive. A few looked thoughtful. Valshara found herself drifting closer to the humans, drawn by something she couldn't name. Hope, maybe. Or curiosity about beings who could look at an impossible problem and not see impossibility. Tharex raised one of his 4 arms for silence. And what do you propose we do with this theory? Let us investigate. James spoke for the first time. His voice was deeper than Sarah's, calm and certain. Give us a ship. We'll go to the dark zones and find out what's really happening. Impossible, Tharex said. We need every vessel for evacuation efforts. Then give us one that's outdated, Sarah said. One you were going to scrap. We don't need much. Just a chance to prove we're right. Valshara made her decision before she fully realized it. I will go with them, she announced, her voice carrying across the chamber. As an archivist, she held special status, independent of the council. If they find nothing, we lose only an outdated ship and 3 months of time. If they find something, we might save the galaxy. Tharex looked at her with 6 eyes that held 6,000 years of exhaustion. Finally, he nodded. Very well. 3 cycles. If you find nothing, we proceed with evacuation. And humanity's petition is denied. Sarah smiled. It was the kind of smile that Valshara would later learn was very human, full of determination and something the humans called stubborn hope. We'll find something, Sarah said. The universe doesn't just break for no reason. There's always an answer. We just have to be brave enough to look for it. As they left the chamber, Valshara heard one of the council members mutter to another, arrogant children. They'll learn that some problems have no solutions. But Valshara wasn't so sure. She'd spent 6,000 years learning what was impossible. Maybe it was time to spend 3 months with beings who hadn't learned that lesson yet. Maybe, just maybe. That would make all the difference. The research vessel Prometheus was 200 years old and looked every day of it. Valshara flickered through its narrow corridors, watching the human crew work with an intensity that surprised her. There were only 12 of them, working with equipment that the Consilients had considered obsolete decades ago. Yet none of them seemed discouraged. Dock Captain Michelle Torres stood on the bridge, her gray-streaked hair pulled back in a tight knot. She'd served in Earth's Navy before joining the Science Division, and it showed in how she ran her ship. Efficient, direct, no wasted words. We're approaching the dark zone boundary, she announced. All stations, report. The responses came quickly. Every system was ready, even the ones held together with what the humans called improvisation. Valshara had learned that word in her first week aboard. Humans improvised constantly. When something broke, they fixed it with whatever was available. When a problem had no solution in the manuals, they invented one. The Consilient species would have filed reports and waited for proper replacements. Humans just made things work. Archivist Valshara, Torres said. turning to where Velshara hovered near the navigation station. "You've been quiet. Nervous?" "I have existed for 6,000 years," Velshara replied. "I have witnessed the birth of stars and the death of civilizations. Yet I find myself uncertain of what we will find here." Torres smiled. "Good. Uncertainty means we might actually learn something." They crossed into the dark zone an hour later. The change was visible even to the naked eye. The stars here were dim, their light pale and weak. Worlds that should have been warm and living were cold. The universe here felt tired. Dr. Yuki Tanaka sat at the science station, her fingers dancing across controls that shouldn't have been able to process the data they were receiving. But she'd modified them, adding processing power from 3 other outdated systems and writing new code in the 2 weeks it took to reach this place. "There," Yuki said suddenly. "I'm getting readings." Exactly where Dr. Chum predicted. The main screen showed what looked like empty space, but the instruments told a different story. Space itself was bent there, folded in ways that made Velshara's energy form shiver. And there was something else. A structure, vast beyond measure, stretched across light years. So thin it was nearly invisible, but so large it dwarfed entire star systems. "What is that?" Torres asked. "I don't know," Yuki admitted. "But it's definitely artificial. And it's definitely doing something to the stellar radiation in this sector." Engineer Marcus Webb came onto the bridge, wiping his hands on a cloth. He'd been working in the engine room for the past 6 hours. "Captain, I've got the scanner array working. It's not pretty, but it'll give us better resolution." "How did you get it working?" Velshara asked. "That system has been broken for 3 years. Marcus grinned. "Duct tape and optimism. Also, I borrowed some parts from the food replicator. Hope nobody wanted hot meals for a while." Torres shook her head but didn't argue. That was another thing Velshara had learned about humans. They cared more about results than proper procedure. "Show me what you can see, Webb." The new scans revealed more details. The structure wasn't just large. It was impossibly complex. Billions of interconnected filaments, each one pulling energy from the nearby stars and channeling it somewhere else. Somewhere that their instruments couldn't detect. "It's like a net," Sarah Chun said, studying the data. She'd been working at a secondary station, barely sleeping since they'd left Consilient space. A harvesting net. But harvesting for what? And sending the energy where? Another dimension, maybe? Yuki suggested. "These readings show quantum fluctuations that shouldn't exist in normal space." Velshara listened to them theorize. The Consilient scientists would have spent months debating, checking their theories against thousands of years of established knowledge. The humans just threw ideas around like toys, testing each one, discarding what didn't work, building on what did. It was chaotic. It was messy. It was effective. "We need to get closer," Sarah said. "Actually touch one of those filaments. Get material samples if we can." "That's dangerous," Velshara warned. "We don't know what will happen if we interact with it directly." "Which is why we need to try," James Okoye said. He'd been standing quietly in the corner, but now he moved to the tactical station. "I can pilot one of the shuttle pods. Get in close, take readings, get out." "I'll go with you," Marcus said immediately. "You'll need an engineer if anything goes wrong." Torres considered this for exactly 5 seconds. "Do it, but you've got 2 hours. Any sign of trouble, you pull back immediately." Velshara watched them prepare. In the Consilience, this kind of mission would have required committees, safety reviews, backup plans for the backup plans. The humans just grabbed their equipment and went. Was it bravery or foolishness? She couldn't tell. Maybe humans didn't know the difference. The shuttle launched 30 minutes later. Valshara observed from the bridge as James piloted them toward one of the massive filaments. Up close, it looked even stranger. The material seemed to exist partially outside normal space, flickering in and out of visibility. "Getting energy readings," Marcus reported over the comm. "This thing is channeling massive amounts of stellar radiation. And there's something else. Looks like maintenance ports. This thing was designed to be serviced." "Serviced by who?" Torres asked. "I'm detecting markings," James said. "Symbols. They're worn down, millions of years old at least, but they're definitely there." "Valshara, can you analyze these?" The symbols appeared on the main screen. Valshara felt her form dim with recognition and horror. "Those are architect marks," she said quietly. Every being in the bridge turned to look at her. Sarah spoke first. "Who are the architects?" "We don't know," Valshara admitted. "They were here before any current species achieved sentience. Billions of years ago. They built structures across the galaxy, impossible things that we still don't fully understand. Then they left. Every scholar in the Consilience has studied their ruins. We've never been able to decipher their technology. Well, we just found one of their machines," Marcus said. "And it's still running. Still working exactly as designed. It's harvesting stellar energy and sending it somewhere else." Yuki pulled up more data on her screen. "If these things are across the entire galaxy, and they've been running for millions of years, then the dimming we're seeing isn't the universe dying. It's these harvesters getting more efficient. Or maybe breaking down in a way that makes them drain more energy. The Consilience spent 1,000 years thinking this was natural," Sarah said slowly. "They never looked for an artificial cause because they couldn't imagine technology on this scale. Can we shut it down?" Torres asked. "Not locally," Marcus replied. "These things are networked. Quantum entangled, if I'm reading this right. They all talk to each other. Shutting down one won't help. We'd need to shut down all of them at once. How many are there?" Yuki ran calculations on her modified computer. The number that came back made everyone silent. "Thousands," she finally said. "Maybe tens of thousands. Spread across the entire galaxy." Valshara felt something she hadn't felt in 6,000 years. True fear, not worry, not concern, but deep existential fear. "Then it's hopeless," she said. "We can't reach thousands of locations. Even if we could, we don't understand architect technology well enough to interface with it." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was the same smile she'd had in the Consilience chamber. Determined, stubborn, human. "That's what everyone keeps saying," Sarah said. "That it's hopeless. That it's impossible. But we found the cause. We found what's killing the stars. And if these things are networked, that means there's a central control somewhere. A way to send a command to all of them at once. Finding that control would take years," Valshara protested. "Deciphering architect code would take centuries." "Then we better get started," Sarah replied. "James, Marcus, get every scan you can of those symbols and that maintenance port. Yuki, start working on pattern recognition. We've deciphered dead languages before. Egyptian hieroglyphs, Mayan codex, linear, we figured those out. We'll figure this out too." "Those were human languages," Valshara said. "So?" Sarah looked at her with eyes that held no doubt. "A language is a language. Code is code. If someone built it, someone else can understand it. That's what humans do. We figure things out." Torres started giving orders, and the crew moved with purpose. Valshara watched them work and realized something profound. The Consilient species had spent so long being wise that they'd forgotten how to be bold. They'd learned so much about what was impossible that they'd stopped trying for the possible. Humans hadn't learned that lesson yet. Maybe that was their real gift to the galaxy. Maybe that was exactly what the stars needed. Hash. The stars burned brighter after humanity arrived. The Grand Hall was full when Sarah Chen presented their findings. Every council seat was occupied, and behind them stood representatives from hundreds of worlds. Velshara flickered near the entrance, watching faces that ranged from skeptical to desperate. High Councilor Therex looked older than he had 3 months ago. The way of failing stars showed in every movement. Dr. Chun, you return at the end of your allotted time. What have you found? Sarah activated the holographic display. The galaxy appeared above them, covered in red marks showing the harvester locations. There were thousands of them. We found your answer, she said. The stars aren't dying. They're being drained by artificial structures built billions of years ago. We call them harvesters. The chamber filled with noise. Questions, accusations, disbelief. Sarah waited for silence, then continued. These harvesters were built by the architects. They're pulling stellar radiation into another dimension. We believe it's preparation. Preparation for what? Therex asked. For their return, Yuki Tanaka said, stepping forward. She looked exhausted but electric, with the kind of energy that comes from solving an impossible puzzle. The architects left, but they planned to come back. These harvesters are terraforming equipment. They're lowering the galaxy's ambient energy levels to what the architects find comfortable. Then we are doomed, one of the council members said. We cannot fight beings who built such technology. We're not going to fight them, Sarah said. We're going to turn off their machines. Laughter. Bitter, tired laughter from beings who had lived for thousands of years. Therex didn't laugh, but his voice was heavy. Dr. Chun, the Consilience has studied architect ruins for 40,000 years. We have never successfully interfaced with their technology. You expect us to believe you can control thousands of these harvesters? Yes, Sarah said simply. Because they're machines. And all machines have control systems. We found it. She pulled up a new image. It showed a structure deep in the galactic core, massive and complex, pulsing with the quantum entanglement that connected all the harvesters. The harvesters were designed to be maintained. They have control nodes that update and monitor them. This is the master node. If we can access it and send the right shutdown command, every harvester in the galaxy will turn off simultaneously. And you can decode architect systems? Therex asked. The question was a challenge. We already have, Yuki said. She pulled up screens full of alien symbols alongside their translations. It took us 2 months, running every pattern recognition algorithm we could build, testing billions of possible combinations, but we cracked their basic command structure. We didn't try to understand their logic. We just tried everything until something worked. Velshara watched the council members' faces. They were struggling with the concept. 40,000 years of trying to understand the architects and humans had bypassed understanding entirely. They just brute forced the problem. Even if your translation is correct, Therex said slowly, reaching the galactic core is incredibly dangerous. The radiation alone would kill most species. Then we'll use shielding, Commander Torres said, stepping forward. She'd cleaned up for the council, but she still looked like someone who'd spent 3 months making an old ship do impossible things. We've already modified the Prometheus to handle the trip. One ship cannot carry enough personnel to ensure success, another council member objected. You're right, Sarah agreed. That's why we need everyone. Every species, every ship that can be spared. The master node isn't just one location. It's a distributed system with relay points across the galaxy. We need teams at every relay point, all sending the shutdown command simultaneously. If even one relay fails, the cascade won't complete. The chamber went silent. What Sarah was describing was the largest coordinated effort in galactic history. Hundreds of species, thousands of ships, all working together with perfect timing. Impossible, Theric said. The logistics alone would take years to coordinate. We don't have years, James Okoye said. His voice cut through the doubt like a blade. We have weeks, maybe days. The harvesters are accelerating. More sectors are going dark every day. You can spend years planning the perfect operation, or you can spend weeks doing the possible operation. Your choice. Torres pulled up a mission outline. It was rough, full of what humans called acceptable risk. The Consilience members looked at it with horror. So many things could go wrong. So many chances for failure. This plan is reckless, one council member said. Yes, Sarah agreed. It absolutely is. But it's also our only chance. You can keep waiting for a better option, or you can accept that sometimes good enough is better than perfect. Velshara found herself moving forward, drifting into the center of the chamber. 6,000 years of caution told her to stay quiet. But 3 months with humans had taught her something about speaking up. I have watched these humans work, she said, her voice resonating through the hall. They are young. They are inexperienced. They break rules and improvise solutions that should not work. But they succeed anyway. Not because they are smarter than us or wiser than us. They succeed because they have not learned to be afraid of failure. She turned to face the council directly. We are ancient. We are wise. And we are paralyzed by our wisdom. We know too much about what cannot be done. Perhaps it is time to learn from beings who do not yet know the meaning of impossible. The silence that followed was different, thoughtful, uncertain. Finally, Theric stood. His forearms spread wide in a gesture of decision. We will proceed with Dr. Chun's plan, he announced. All consilient species are hereby ordered to contribute ships and personnel to this operation. We will coordinate relay teams. We will reach the master node. And we will shut down the harvesters. He looked directly at Sarah. You will lead the team to the core. The fate of the galaxy rests on your shoulders, Dr. Chun. I hope your species' boldness is enough. Sarah smiled. That stubborn, determined human smile. It will be. Because giving up isn't in our nature. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Ships gathered from across the galaxy. Engineers from dozens of species worked alongside humans, learning to improvise, learning to try instead of plan. Velshara watched it all and marveled. The Consilients had spent 47,000 years building careful, measured cooperation. Humans had built urgent, desperate cooperation in 14 days. The Prometheus led a fleet of 200 ships toward the galactic core. Behind them, across the galaxy, thousands of other ships moved toward relay points. Each team had humans mixed in, teaching, encouraging, showing others that impossible was just a word. The journey to the core took 3 days. 3 days of increasing radiation, of systems failing and being fixed with improvisation and optimism. 3 days of Torres keeping her crew focused. Of Sarah checking and rechecking the shutdown codes. Of Yuki building backup systems from spare parts and hope. When they reached the master node, it was even more impressive than the scans had shown. A structure the size of a solar system, pulsing with power drawn from 1 million dying stars. The Harvester's heart. All relay teams report ready, James announced from the CUM station. We're synchronized. Waiting on your command, Dr. Chun. Sarah took a breath. Velshara saw her hands shake for just a moment. Then steady. Human hands attached to human arms. Part of a being barely 100 years old who was about to try something the beings, billions of years old, had never attempted. Send the command, Sarah said. Yuki's fingers moved. The architect codes, translated through brute force and determination, poured into the master node. Across the galaxy, other teams did the same at their relay points. The quantum network that had run for millions of years suddenly received a message it hadn't heard in eons, shut down. For a moment, nothing happened. The master node pulsed. The harvesters continued their work. Valshara felt her hope dim. Then the node flickered. Once, twice, and went dark. Across the galaxy, thousands of harvesters stopped. The massive nets that had been draining stars for millions of years simply turned off. And the stars, freed from their burden, began to burn brighter dot in the Grand Hall. Beings watched the galactic display as red zones turned green. On 1,000 worlds, people looked up to see their suns grow brighter. On Station Zenith, High Counselor Therix watched readings that showed stellar output rising to levels not seen in a million years. On the Prometheus, Sarah Chun sat down heavily in her chair and allowed herself to shake. "We did it," she whispered. Torres put a hand on her shoulder. "You did it." "No," Sarah said, looking around at her crew, at the alien engineers who'd learned to improvise, and Valshara, who'd learned to hope again. "We did it together." The stars burned brighter, and across the galaxy, in 1,000 languages, beings learned a new concept. A human concept. Sometimes, the only way to do the impossible is to not know it's impossible in the first place. 3 months after the harvesters shut down, the Grand Hall looked different. Not physically. The walls were the same. The seats were the same. But something had changed in the air, in the way beings moved and spoke. There was energy here now. Hope. Sarah Chun stood at the center of the chamber, but she wasn't alone. Marcus Webb was with her, along with Yuki Tanaka and a dozen other humans. Beside them stood representatives from 20 species who had worked on the relay teams. In the audience, Valshara flickered with colors that meant pride. High Counselor Therix addressed the assembly. His forearms were steady now, his voice strong. The Consilience has existed for 47,000 years. In that time, we have made many decisions. Today, we make perhaps the most important one. He gestured to Sarah. "Dr. Chun, 3 months ago, you entered this chamber as a petitioner. Your species requested membership in the Consilience. We denied that request. We were fools to do so." The chamber was silent. Every being present knew what was coming, but they needed to hear it spoken. "Humanity saved us," Therix continued. "Not through superior technology, not through ancient wisdom, but through something we had forgotten in our long existence. You showed us how to be bold. How to try when trying seemed pointless. How to believe when belief seemed foolish." He stood from his seat, descending to the main floor. This alone was significant. Council members rarely left their elevated positions. "On behalf of the Consilience, I apologize. We dismissed you as children. We were wrong. You are not children. You are teachers." Therix extended 2 of his arms toward Sarah. "Humanity is granted full membership in the Grand Consilience, effective immediately. More than that, we are creating a new position, an Innovation Council, dedicated to challenging our assumptions and exploring solutions we would not normally consider. Dr. Chen, we would be honored if you would lead it." Sarah looked at James, at her team, at the beings who had worked alongside them. Then she smiled and shook Therix's offered hands. "We'd be honored. But on one condition." "Name it," Therix said. "The Innovation Council isn't just for humans. Every species should have representatives. Because here's what we learned in the Dark Zones. Everyone has something to contribute. The key is creating an environment where people aren't afraid to try new things." Therix's expression showed approval. "Agreed. The Innovation Council will be truly representative, and it will have the authority to pursue unconventional solutions to any problem the Consilience faces." As the formal proceedings concluded, Valshara approached. Sarah, the human and the ancient energy being, had become unlikely friends over their 3 months together. "You changed everything," Valshara said. "In 6,000 years of existence, I have never seen such a rapid shift in how people think." Sarah shook her head. "We didn't change anything fundamental. We just reminded everyone of something they'd forgotten. Which is? That making mistakes is okay. That trying and failing is better than not trying at all. That sometimes you have to jump first and figure out how to fly on the way down." Sarah laughed. "Humanity's secret isn't that we're smarter or better. It's that we're too stubborn to quit and too inexperienced to know when something's impossible." "That is both inspiring and terrifying," Valshara observed. "Yeah, that sounds about right." Marcus Webb joined them, carrying a datapad. "Captain Torres wants to show you something. It's about the harvesters." They made their way to the Prometheus, which was docked at Station Zenith. The old research vessel had become famous across the galaxy. Museums wanted it. Collectors offered fortunes for it. Torres had told them all the same thing. The Prometheus wasn't done working yet. On the bridge, Torres pulled up sensor data from across the galaxy. "The stars aren't just back to normal," she explained. "They're burning brighter than they have in millions of years. The harvesters were suppressing stellar output for so long that when we shut them down, the stars had all this pent-up energy." "Is that dangerous?" Valshara asked. "Actually, no. It's incredible. Worlds that were barely habitable are thriving now. Agricultural yields are up across the galaxy. Renewable energy from stellar power is exceeding all projections." Torres grinned. "Turns out saving the galaxy had some nice side effects." Yuki pulled up another screen. "But we've got a new problem. A good problem, but still a problem. The architect network is shut down, but it's still there. Thousands of massive structures floating in space. What do we do with them?" "Study them," Sarah said immediately. "Those harvesters represent technology billions of years old. If we can understand even a fraction of how they work, imagine what we could build." "The Council has already thought of that," Torres said. "They're forming research teams. And guess who they want leading the human contingent?" Sarah groaned. "Can't I have a vacation first?" "That's what I told them," Torres replied. "I said you needed at least 3 months of doing absolutely nothing before tackling the next impossible project." 3 months sounds about right, Sarah agreed. Then she paused. "Wait, what impossible project?" Torres's grin widened. "Turns out shutting down the harvesters might have sent a signal to wherever the architects went. Some of the deep space monitoring stations are picking up unusual readings. Something big is moving in the void between galaxies. Heading this way." The bridge went quiet. Valshara felt her form flicker through worried colors. "The architects are returning." "Maybe," Yuki said. "We won't know for sure for another few years. But if they are coming back, we need to be ready." "Ready to fight?" Valshara asked. "Ready to talk," Sarah corrected. "We shut down their machines. They might be angry. Or they might be curious why we're here at all. Either way, we need to understand them." James had been quiet, studying the sensor data. Now he spoke up. "If the architects built the harvesters, they're operating on a completely different technological level than we are. Even with the whole consilience working together, we might not be able to defend against them." "Then we better make sure we don't have to," Sarah said. "We've got a few years. That's enough time to do 3 things. First, we study the harvester network and learn everything we can. Second, we prepare for first contact. Learn about them. Try to understand their perspective. Third, we show them what we've built here. What have we built?" Valshara asked. "A galaxy where 1,000 species work together. Where ancient wisdom and young boldness combine. Where problems get solved, not because one species is superior, but because everyone contributes their piece. Sarah looked around the bridge at her diverse crew. If the architects are as advanced as we think, maybe they'll see value in that. Maybe they'll want to learn from us, same as we want to learn from them. And if they don't? Marcus asked. Sarah's smile turned stubborn. Then we figure it out. Same as we always do. Together. Torres ordered drinks brought to the bridge. It wasn't regulation. The regulations were becoming more like suggestions lately. As they toasted to saving the galaxy and possibly having to do it again, Velshara found herself thinking about how much had changed. 6 months ago, she had been 6,000 years old and felt ancient. Now she felt young again. Humanity had done that. They'd reminded her and everyone else that age was just a number. What mattered was being willing to learn, to try, to fail, and try again. Tell me something, Velshara said to Sarah. Why doesn't your species give up? Even when faced with impossible odds, you keep trying. Why? Sarah considered the question seriously. I think it's because we haven't been around long enough to learn better. We've only been in space for 200 years. We've only been civilized for maybe 10,000. Every generation of humans has faced something that seemed impossible, and every generation has figured it out anyway. Ending slavery, curing diseases, reaching the moon. We're just used to doing impossible things. What happens when you encounter something truly impossible? Velshara asked. Something that cannot be solved? I don't know, Sarah admitted. We haven't found it yet. Months later, back on Earth, Sarah Chun stood in her backyard looking up at the night sky. The stars were brighter now, visibly brighter. Even Sol, Earth's sun, burned with renewed vigor. Scientists were still arguing about all the effects this would have on climate and ecosystems. But everyone agreed on one thing. It was beautiful. Her daughter Emma, 7 years old, came out to join her. Mama, why are the stars so bright? Sarah knelt down beside her. Because they're not tired anymore, sweetie. They were working too hard for too long, and now they can rest a little. So they're shining brighter. Did you help them rest? I helped a little bit. A lot of people helped. Emma looked thoughtful. My teacher says you saved the galaxy. I didn't do it alone. I had friends. Human friends and alien friends. We all worked together. Can I help save the galaxy when I grow up? Sarah hugged her daughter. By the time you grow up, there will be new problems to solve. New impossible things that need doing. And yes, you can absolutely help. You can do anything if you're brave enough to try and smart enough to ask for help. They stood together, watching the brighter stars. Somewhere out there, the architects might be coming. New challenges awaited. The galaxy would face new crises, new impossibilities. But Sarah wasn't worried. Humanity had learned something important, and they taught it to the rest of the galaxy. The universe doesn't give you problems you can't solve. It only gives you problems you haven't solved yet, Dot. And if you keep trying, keep learning, keep working together, eventually you figure it out. You might fail a dozen times. You might have to improvise and make mistakes and do things the wrong way first. But eventually, you find the right way. The stars burned brighter after humanity arrived. Not because humans had special powers or ancient wisdom, but because humans had something just as valuable. They didn't know when to quit. And sometimes, in a vast and difficult universe, stubborn hope is the most powerful force of all.